The laughter that night wasn't ordinary. It was cruel, echoing like broken glass against marble walls. Inside Manhattan's most exclusive Chinese restaurant, a black waiter stood still, holding a silver tray as insults in Mandarin sliced through the air. To most guests, the words were incomprehensible, but the meaning was clear in the billionaire's smirk. "Monkey," she called him, "fit for toilets, not fine dining." The table erupted, desperate to impress her power. The waiter's eyes stayed calm, but something in that calm was dangerous, the kind of silence that breaks only once. When he finally replied, in flawless Chinese, the entire restaurant froze. The Jade Dragon Palace in Manhattan wasn't just a restaurant. It was a kingdom of polished marble floors, dragon-carved pillars, and golden chandeliers that sparkled like falling stars. Only the wealthiest could book a table here, and tonight, one table shone brighter than the rest. Seated at its center was Li Weijiang, a Chinese billionaire who commanded a $60 billion technology empire. Known for her ruthless deals and venomous arrogance, she intimidated even men twice her age and wealth. Businessmen courted her favor, laughed at her insults, and nodded at every word, desperate for a share of her empire. Among the silent staff weaving through the hall was David Thompson. At 32, David had been working here for 8 months. Tall, strong-shouldered, with an expression carved from years of quiet endurance, he carried himself with the poise of a man who had seen storms far worse than rude customers. Behind the crisp uniform was a linguist, a polyglot who had studied languages across continents, including 2 long years in Beijing. But to these wealthy guests, he was just the help. When David approached Liwi's table to pour wine, her sharp eyes locked on him. Her lips curled into a cruel smile. She leaned back, speaking in Mandarin, words laced with venom. "Look at that monkey serving our table. I bet he doesn't even know how to hold chopsticks. People like him should be scrubbing toilets, not serving civilized people like us." Her American guests laughed nervously, not understanding a word, but eager to echo her cruelty. They laughed at her laughter. The sound burned in his ears, but his face remained stone. For David, this wasn't new. He had spent his life being underestimated, written off or looked down upon, for his skin, for his work, for assumptions people made about his past. But something in the billionaire's words carried an edge sharper than usual. It wasn't just insult. It was dehumanization, deliberate and venomous. He kept pouring the wine, his hand steady. The laughter rolled across the table. More remarks followed in Mandarin, each more cutting than the last. "That one probably didn't even finish high school," she sneered, her chopsticks tapping against her plate. "Doesn't he look out of place here? A monkey in uniform. I wonder if he even knows what this food is. Perhaps we should explain it slowly, like to a child." The businessman chuckled again, still clueless about the words, but locked into the performance of pleasing her. David knew this script well. The powerful humiliate, the crowd follows, the victim stays silent. But tonight was different. Inside him stirred a calm that wasn't resignation, but control. He remembered his years in Beijing, studying Mandarin late into the night, teaching English by day, absorbing the culture, the poetry, the nuance of tones. He remembered his professors telling him his accent was nearly flawless, his grammar impeccable. He remembered promising himself that language would one day become his weapon. Now the weapon waited, sharp and ready. As David returned with another bottle of wine, Liwi smirked again, her voice rising louder in Mandarin, ensuring he heard. "See, no matter how straight he stands, he'll always be beneath us. Born low, always low. The table burst into laughter again. Even waiters passing by lowered their eyes, unwilling to meet his gaze. It was the moment, the line that crossed too far. David set the bottle down with deliberate grace, looked her directly in the eyes, and replied in flawless Mandarin, "Respect is not given to the wealthy. Respect belongs to those with dignity. Tonight, you have none." The restaurant froze. The clinking of glasses, the shuffle of plates, even the soft notes of the live gazang player in the corner, all fell silent. Every head at the table turned. The American businessmen stared in confusion, realizing only now that the waiter had understood everything. The staff behind him stopped in their tracks, eyes wide. But none looked more shaken than Li Wei-jiang. The billionaire who prided herself on her mastery of power games now sat speechless. Her painted lips parted, then closed again. For the first time that night, her arrogance cracked. David's words had not been loud. They didn't need to be. They were calm, precise, delivered with the authority of someone who not only knew the language, but owned it. His tones were perfect, his grammar impeccable, his confidence undeniable. Gasps spread across nearby tables. Someone whispered, "Did he?" Another murmured, "In Mandarin?" Li Wei shifted uncomfortably in her chair, tugging at her diamond bracelet. Her smirk returned briefly, but weaker, trembling at the edges. She tried to laugh it off, but the sound fell flat. The power she had wielded so effortlessly minutes ago had been stolen, not by wealth, not by status, but by knowledge. David didn't linger, he didn't gloat, he didn't bow. He simply nodded once, the tray steady in his hand, and turned away. And that simple act, walking away after dismantling her cruelty, carried more weight than any insult ever could. The silence that followed was heavier than any laughter before it. No one dared add another cruel remark. No one dared laugh again. The American businessmen shifted in their seats, embarrassed for having joined in without knowing. Their smiles faded into shame, their eyes darting anywhere but toward the waiter. Even the servers whispered among themselves, their admiration clear. Li Wei-jiang spent the rest of the night quieter than anyone had ever seen her. She fiddled with her wine glass, avoided David's gaze, and for once no one dared encourage her arrogance. The power dynamic had shifted irreversibly. David continued his shift as though nothing had happened. He served with dignity, moved with grace, and left no trace of arrogance in his wake. For him, it wasn't about victory. It was about respect, about reminding those who tried to strip it away that he still carried it within himself. By morning, the story had already traveled beyond the Jade Dragon Palace. Guests retold it at offices and newsrooms. The image spread, a billionaire silenced, a black waiter standing tall with words sharper than gold. The lesson was simple, yet profound. Racism often thrives not in anger, but in silence, in the unspoken belief that some voices don't matter. But when those voices rise, calm and unshaken, they shatter walls that money cannot protect. And so, the question lingers long after the laughter has faded. When cruelty disguises itself as power, will you remain silent? Or will you find the courage to speak in a language the world cannot ignore?